So you're an experienced player now, and you've got the rules of the combat chain down. You know them inside and out. But then there are those crazy edge cases where cards are removed from the combat chain. They're either banished, put into soul, destroyed, or otherwise. And it might happen on an active link or on one that's already resolved. So in today's New Player and Old 2 series video, we're covering what happens when cards are removed from the combat chain. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks, and welcome back to another installment of the New Player and Old 2 series here on the channel, where we cover some of the basic concepts in Flesh and Blood. Today we're going to talk about some of these odd edge cases where cards are removed from the combat chain for any number of reasons, and how that can impact interactions with other cards that we may want to play. Now, if you're just finding this series, in order to put today's concepts into context, I highly recommend you check out my Understanding the Combat Chain video. I've linked it here, and it's one of my most viewed videos that really dives into the fundamentals of the combat chain. It's really important to have that understanding as a baseline going into today's video. So for today's video, the approach I want to use is an example-based one. We're going to look at a few simple, but generally applicable examples in order to understand the concepts. In our first example, we're going to look at a card that has caused a lot of confusion over the time since it's released in Everfest. Fractal Replication is a zero-drop Illusionist attack that, basically, clones your other Illusionist attack action cards in play. When you play or defend with Fractal, it gains all abilities and effects of all Illusionist attack action cards on the combat chain. Its attack becomes equal to the greatest base attack of such cards, and its defense is equal to the greatest base defense of such cards. If following a card like Dunebreaker Centipi, Fractal functionally becomes a 5 attack, 3 defense with Phantasm and Go Again. Note that it also picks up the When Destroyed text as well, if relevant. So that itself is simple enough to understand. But where things get tricky is if there is no card on the active chain to copy. In that case, as per the release notes, Fractal has 0 attack and 0 defense. And specifically to the relevance of today's discussion is that last bullet there. Cards that are no longer on the combat chain are not considered for its effects. In other words, even though the card was on the chain at one point, it's not there anymore, and thus cannot be cloned. Where this is frequently relevant is the case of Herald attacks, often given Go Again with a yellow pitch zone by Luminaris or another method like Snappies or so on. In the case here, when Wartune Herald hits, it is put into your hero's soul. This means that it is no longer on the combat chain, so following it up with Fractal Replication results in there being nothing to copy. This is a case that I've personally seen happen many times. Fractal is an awesome card, but it's important to use it correctly. Lean into your non-heralds for this one, or ensure that it follows a herald that didn't hit. Our next example is an awesome little card for our ninjas in Double Strike. When you play Double Strike, it attacks for 1 base with Go Again, but as the link resolves, it banishes, allowing you to play it again this combat chain, after which it loses a Play Again ability. First off, make sure you play it before you close the combat chain, otherwise you lose it. It's only good for the current chain and not for the turn. But second, and relevant to today's discussion, is how this matters for the number of cards on the chain. Referencing the release notes, we see that the chain link from the first instance still exists, but there is no longer a Double Strike card on that link. The card itself would reside on whichever chain link you play it the second time. In other words, this card can create 2 chain links, but only provides 1 card on the combat chain. Where this is relevant is for cards like Benji's Spring Tidings. When Spring Tidings hits, you draw a card for each other attack action card with 2 or less base on the combat chain. Since Spring Tidings counts cards and not links, you would only get 1 draw off of a Double Strike. As shown here, we have a 4-link combat chain, 1 Kodachi and 2 Double Strike links. When Spring Tidings comes in as chain link 4, on hit it will only draw 1 card. The Kodachi doesn't satisfy the attack action requirement, and Spring Tidings specifically references cards on the chain, not links. Now, Double Strike is a pretty straightforward example of this, but there are other interactions out there that fall within this same situation. Always be sure to note chain links versus cards on chain. And now with those 2 examples out of the way, let's move on to the next phase of this discussion, manipulation of previous chain links. And as we go through this, I want to ensure that you understand the primary rule here. We never, ever retroactively change damage dealt or taken on chain links that are already resolved. Once damage is dealt, hit effects are applied, and a chain link is closed, it is considered resolved. Any modification of cards on that link do not change what has already been done. A good example of this is the card Cyclone Roundhouse. In the case that we have the combo line going with Spinning Wheel Kick, Cyclone Roundhouse allows you to banish a random defending card from each chain link. A pretty massive deal, especially if your opponent has maybe blocked with some equipment. On the active link with Cyclone Roundhouse, that means a defending card gets taken away and no longer provides defense against the Roundhouse kick. This would potentially change and affect the damage dealt on that link. But any cards removed from a previous links would have no effect on the damage, hit effects, or otherwise on those links. They are already resolved and we've moved on. The cards themselves are impacted, but not the chain links. We have a similar situation with the warrior attack reaction, Shatter. Shatter allows you to forgo your damage to instead destroy a defending equipment. Now, Shatter can destroy any defending equipment, even one on a previous chain link. In the case here, where we've been able to attack twice with our Great Axe, we could target an equipment on a previous link. But remember, that link already is resolved. The equipment? Sayonara, but there's no change to the resolution of the chain link. Well, folks, that'll do it for today. Short and sweet, but no less important. Remember, we never retroactively change our chain links, and we make sure to count the cards themselves, not just the chain links. That'll do it for today. Let me know in the comments if there's any other questions or anything else we can do to help, and if nothing else, go Commando.